Hello, welcome to another edition of At My Desk. I'm your host, Dr. William Lester. I want to remind you that At My Desk is brought to you by the American Institute of Metaphysics, www.instituteofmetaphysics.com. So, welcome back to another show. We are at the end of August, the beginning of July. And on this episode, we're going to be talking about the subject of cryptozoology in general, but the issue or the topic of Bigfoot specifically. And there's been a lot in the news in recent weeks and months about Bigfoot reports, Bigfoot sightings. There have even been various photographs and various video footage, all in varying degrees of clarity, as has been the case for decades. Nothing that I feel constitutes the smoking gun, the definitive piece of evidence. Having said that, I do think that Bigfoot is a real creature, a real cryptid, if you will. I do not feel that the Bigfoot phenomena can all be chalked up to hoaxes and mistaken identity or hallucination or any of the the predictable conclusions that are, or the predictable explanations that are proffered by the debunkers. I do think there's something real to it, but I also think that we have a problem in this field. I think there's a real problem because as we continue to insist that there is something real behind the Bigfoot question, we also have to be prepared for the very expected and, quite frankly, the very fair question about, okay, where is it? Or where's the proof? Where's the evidence? Etc. And yes, we can continue to point to the cumulative data, the sightings, the reports, the photos, the videos. We also have the tracks, the footprints, the plaster casts, some of which, again, like the photos and videos, are of varying degrees of quality, from very good down to very suspicious. Now, we've recently had all kinds of conversations about DNA evidence, and there have been articles posted all over the internet. This has been discussed on various websites and different blogs, and of course it's an opportunity for everybody to weigh in. Particularly, it's very interesting to see some of the comments that have been made, some of the commentary that has been made, because I find that oftentimes the commentary cannot be attributed to anyone with any real knowledge and or experience with researching Bigfoot, hunting for Bigfoot, understanding the case history. Usually what you see on these things, on these websites and these blogs, is that you have people who are predisposed one way or the other, and they simply go in there and make their comment, which is predicated on whatever they're predisposed to think. Okay, And this is part of the problem that we have. If you have people who are predisposed to think this is all nonsense, and you're presenting them with evidence that is sketchy, well, then logic would dictate that their reaction is going to be less than enthusiastic. In fact, in many instances, sketchy evidence really only reinforces the vigor of the debunker or the skeptic or the cynic. Skeptics can be dealt with because an honest skeptic is, of course, always open to information and to data. The cynic and the debunker are simply stating their position, and that position will not change. And these are some of the reasons why I have come around to a conclusion about this issue that to some people is going to be a little bit controversial. But I'm speaking about, and I'm speaking to those people who want to see this issue resolved definitively, particularly if you think, as I do, that Bigfoot is a real phenomenon. We're going to have a dead one. Now, I know that that is going to reverberate uncomfortably with some people. But as the old saying goes, I think we're at the point now where we need to get real. We need to get real. Because what we want is for this issue to be explored in depth by the mainstream scientific community, the biologists, the zoologists, the anthropologists. All of the folks working in the laboratories and the universities and this institute and this museum, we want them up to their neck in this issue. And the photographs are not going to get them. The videos are not going to get them. Even the plaster casts of the tracks are not going to get them. The eyewitness reports are not going to get them in a million years. But the body of a Bigfoot laid out on a table for scientific examination will not only get them in, it'll put this issue to bed. Okay? Now, of course, let's just for a second say that we somehow get a dead Bigfoot. Well, as soon as the scientists have established that, yes, this is a real creature, we need to add it to the, to the catalog of zoological, species that we now are aware of. Well, one of the first things that's going to happen is that there's going to be ordinances and laws passed for the protection of this creature. So we're not advocating hunting this creature into extinction. In fact, one dead one will most likely ensure the survival of whatever species this is. Let me go back for just a second and piggyback on, I made a little brief comment about the DNA conversation that's been going on, and there have been all kinds of charges and accusations made about the validity of the DNA sample, the validity of the test, this, that, back and forth. Here's the thing you've got to understand, because there have been hair samples taken that are probably real. But what happens when you do a DNA test? And you're asking the question, here's a sample. All right, tell us, what is this? Well, the biologists, the zoologists, have hundreds of thousands, I don't know, maybe into the millions, I don't know, but they have an incredibly large database of DNA samples in their computers. And this allows them to cross-reference, to check, to compare. Is this a bear? Is this a coyote? Is this whatever? They don't have an example of Bigfoot DNA in their computer. So even if you had samples of legitimate Bigfoot fur and they were 100% genuine, the DNA tests could not match it with something in the database because, like I said, they don't have Bigfoot DNA in their database. So if they did a DNA test on real Bigfoot hair, the most you could hope for is for them to say it's unknown. Now, depending upon what Bigfoot actually is, I'm not even sure that the test would come back looking something remarkably like human. I don't know. So all the hair samples in the world at this point are not going to get us where we want to be. In order genetically to say this is a Bigfoot, they've got to have that sample in their database to say, oh yeah, this matches our sample, so it's a Bigfoot. That we can't do that at this point. If we've got a dead one, the DNA tests go out the window in terms of trying to establish the reality of it. Now, obviously, there will be DNA testing done, obviously, for scientific purposes to see what this is and where it fits in the the tree of life, evolutionary. What is this? How does it relate to human development, human origins, etc.? Because if Bigfoot is a primate of some kind, the question of where it fits in evolutionary biology has to be asked and answered, or has to be addressed. We're going to need a dead one. We know of stories of hunters who've been out and seen Bigfoot. We know of stories of hunters who have had the scope of their rifle trained on Bigfoot. There are even stories of hunters who claim to have shot and killed a Bigfoot before. And of course, like everything else, these are all along the spectrum of credibility. The 2008 Bigfoot hoax didn't do anything to help our situation. But let's just say it does happen. Let's just say that one of these creatures is shot and killed by a hunter. Well, getting attention is not going to be an issue. Because even in light of the hoax a few years ago, if a hunter calls the news media and says he has a a body of a dead Bigfoot, even given the foolishness and absurdity of the hoax, I assure you, the media will show up. And it's not going to take a great deal of analysis and observation to differentiate a real animal, an organism, a life form, from a costume or some other kind of silly fabrication. So the media is going to know. They're going to be able to photograph this thing 50 different ways. It's going to be all over the television. It's going to be all over the internet. So if it's a real Bigfoot, establishing that is not going to be difficult. Now, of course, whoever this hunter or hunters turns out to be will have to cope with the issue, the chain of custody issues. What are their rights of ownership, etc. Because this specimen is going to have to go under scientific scrutiny. That's when the real science will begin, and we don't have to listen anymore about pseudoscience, which is really just a very sweet, uh, uh, diplomatic insult. The scientists will poke and prod. They'll put everything up under the microscope that they can put up under the microscope. Don't expect any scientist to say, oh my goodness, I've been wrong about this all these years. That's not going to happen. So if you think establishing the reality of Bigfoot is going to give you some level of satisfaction from a body of contrite scientists, disavow yourself of that. It makes me curious, that alone makes me curious as to why they would be so dogmatic about feeling that there's no way that this could be real. Because you have to imagine this day is coming. This day is going to come. I don't know who, where, when, but it's going to happen. It's an inevitability. But the point is, we're not going to get where we want to be without a dead one. Now, I can imagine, once this episode gets out, and folks get a chance to watch it and hear what I'm saying, they'll have all the opportunities they can to weigh in about why they think I'm wrong and why they think we can establish its reality without a dead one. And you're free to do so, but I assure you, you're wasting your time. It's not like ghost hunting. You can't get a sample of a ghost and haul it into the laboratory. But this is an animal. This is something that's out there in nature. It's leaving footprints. It's making vocalizations. People have seen it. This is something that we can put our hands on and establish the reality of it and get some of these questions answered. But until we get a dead one. Now, look, I know that I am not even, I am not dismissing the possibility of somehow capturing a live one. I'm not dismissing that possibility. I am, however, dismissing the plausibility of it. I'm looking at the plausibility of establishing the reality of this creature. And if you want to get it done, you're going to have to play the percentages here. So there you have it. I think to firmly establish the reality of Bigfoot, we're going to have a dead one. So give you something to think about. That's all for this edition. I hope you join me for the next show. And remember, I'll always be right here at my desk.